Dallas City Council Member Cara Mendelsohn, thank you so much. We appreciate it. So you're not supporting all 10 ballot propositions for the 2024 bond. Why not?
There's a lot of needs in Dallas, and I think that pretty much everything on that list needs to be done, plus billions more. However, I don't think we're in a financial position to just say, let's take on all that debt plus interest. And the two propositions that I'm recommending people vote against, which is how the proposition is written, is against, is C and H, as in city and hall. Those propositions have other ways to fund those projects. And so we don't really need to go the route of a bond.
So Project C, flood control, how else could that be paid for, those flood control projects? And you're not saying that they're not important, you're just saying they should be paid for differently?
Correct. So flood control is really important, and we have a lot of flooding and erosion issues in Dallas. So what we're asking on the bond is to issue general obligation bonds, which is sort of like your credit card, right? Like you pay for something and then you're going to pay interest on it, or your mortgage, right? So it's over, in this case, it's over 20 years. Well, that's one way, but the way I'm suggesting for the water bonds is to do it through Dallas Water Utility, and we're all paying a bill. But Dallas Water Utility doesn't just bill Dallas residents. We serve other cities with water. And what could happen is, instead of a general obligation bond, we could issue revenue bonds, which means they're pledged against the money we pay on our bill every month. And that means not just Dallas residents would pay, but actually the whole service area would pay for that. So the cost would be less than if we did it through a general obligation.
And then as far as Proposition H, that's on housing. So talk to me a little bit about why you oppose that one specifically.
Well, it's funny, the H1 actually changed over time through the bond process. Originally, it was going to have two parts. It was going to have incentives for developers, which ended up getting moved to economic development. And the second part was to help developers with, I'll say, things that are in the right of way. So if you're building a building and you need to build sidewalks, well, that's in the right of way. And so the city's saying, oh, we'll pay for that, or water connections and other things to help make housing less expensive. And, there's a lot of problems about affordability with housing these days. I think that's no secret to anybody. But the thing is, we have more than a dozen other ways to pay for housing besides just doing, again, general obligation bonds. So everything we're talking about with housing, we would have to take on that debt and pay interest on. And so when we think about how can the city help with affordability on housing, we have a lot of tools at our disposal. First of all, in the federal government, there's a lot of tools. People have heard a lot about like opportunity zones. They've heard about tax credits. We, of course, got a lot of money through ARPA. There's home programs. There's CDBG programs. At the state level, there's 4 and 9% tax credit deals. There's a mortgage loan and bond process, again, through the state. At the city level, we have a housing finance corporation that can provide that financing. We do land banking. We have a fee in lieu program. Let me see, I've got a little cheat sheet here for you. We have the Lone Star PACE program. We have the LIFT fund. We have Community Reinvestment Act funds, and there's a Dallas Opportunity Fund. There's actually more on the list, but I think you get the idea that when we're talking about incentivizing affordable housing, we have a lot of tools in the toolbox. That's what gets said almost every single city council meeting. And frankly, we're using them. We're actually ahead of what our goal was in terms of affordable housing production. So it's not like we're not creating it. It's not like we don't have tools to do it, but I don't think it's wise for us to take on debt to create affordable housing.
Now, there are bond propositions that you are supporting, and that includes streets, Prop A, parks, Prop B, public safety, Prop F, and then IT, information technology improvements, Prop J. Why those?
Yeah, I'm going to call those the no-brainers. I mean, I don't think anybody who drives in Dallas can't understand why we need to do the roads, the streets proposition. It's not just streets, it's also what we call transportation. So that means like traffic signals. And this is essential. Besides the fact that we're wearing down everybody's vehicles, there's also safety elements involved. And what we've seen at one intersection up near me in far north Dallas, the city switched out the traffic signals, which were original from day one. And they've seen a 30% reduction in traffic accidents there. It also will help reduce smog as the cars aren't idling, waiting to get through the light. So we really are way, way, way behind on traffic signals. I think it's 45% of the traffic signals in Dallas are older than me, and they have about a 30-year useful life. So you can imagine that is way, way over date. So I definitely hope that people will join me in supporting the streets and transportation proposition. The parks proposition isn't going to be a super fancy parks thing. I mean, there's a couple of fun projects in there, but mostly what we're talking about are things like we need new lighting at the parks, that the lighting is at risk of falling over because it's so rusted out that it's dangerous. We need security. We need our soccer fields redone. We have playgrounds. In fact, in my district, 3/4 of the playgrounds are older than their useful life, meaning they're 30 to 50 years old. I've got parents taking kids to the playgrounds where the playground is the same one they played on when they grew up on. And these need to be switched out for safety. So a lot of the parks propositions that it's also developing some parks in areas that the residents don't have local access. They can't get there. This has been a big priority in terms of quality of life and also even safety and giving people a safe, fun place to go and exercise and be with other people. The next proposition, which is public safety, you know, I chair public safety. I'm a longtime public safety supporter. And the biggest item in there is the police academy. And we have got to build this new regional police academy. The state has already invested over $20 million. The Communities Foundation of Texas, another 10 million. And after the voters approve the 50 million that we've put in the bond, what we're going to see is the private donors step up for, again, another 70 million to really make this the place for modern policing. Policing's changed a lot with virtual reality policing, with reality-based training. And right now our officers are learning techniques in space that was never designed for this. It was built out as spec commercial property, and it's really bad. It smells terrible. It's a horrible facility. And so they're using like this open area where they've sort of rigged up these other units. And this new one is going to be fantastic. It's going to be down on the UNT campus. And hopefully we'll get a number of those criminal justice college students end up joining the force. So I'm looking forward to that partnership. And the final proposition that I recommend people support is the IT proposition. I think Dallas saw what happened when we lost police files, the IT department. You know, we were hacked into, and this would be for a new server center that would be up to date in technology and protocols. We need to safeguard our information better. It's only $5 million, and the city's already put away some additional money to make this happen.
I did want to ask you about the police training facility. So you're saying that if voters approve this $50 million, and with the other 30 million already in other commitments, you're saying private donors would automatically come in with $70 million?
Jennifer Gates is actually leading the fundraising effort. And I think once this bond passes, what we're going to see are people who have been waiting to make sure that it does pledge their support. So there's a lot of money to raise, but the community is very supportive of the police department and knows that we really have to make sure that we keep the highest trained, most professional force in America, because we've got a lot of challenges and we have to be ready to face them.
And what do you say to, I understand there's one group that opposes this. What would you say?
Probably the same group that wanted us to defund police way back when. And what I'm going to say is that we need to have a robust police force. Right now, we are down hundreds of officers, and I have not met anybody that doesn't want more police in their neighborhood, that doesn't want a highly trained officer, a professional force. And I think our officers are doing an outstanding job with the conditions they have, but we can do better. We can keep going.
The other thing that you had mentioned in your op-ed piece for the Dallas Morning News was there are 4 propositions that you leave up to the voters to decide. It's about $209 million, and that is libraries, homelessness, the arts, and then economic development. Talk to me a little bit about that.
You know, there's a lot of good projects in there. I mean, you look at the arts, these are necessary things like, you know, HVAC and roofing. These are not like to help them build a new wing or something like that. The question is really, do the voters want to take on that debt? And we're facing a lot of debt in the city of Dallas. So in addition to known debt, which is about 3.5 billion, we have 3.4 billion in unfunded liabilities for the Dallas Police Fire Pension, and then 1.2 billion in unfunded liabilities for our employee retirement fund. So that's 8 billion before we start talking about this bond. You pointed out a number that's out there, which is the bond itself is 1.25 billion, but that's just principal. When you add in interest, you're talking about 1.76. And then a lot of people don't realize that actually each project can go over the amount approved by 25% without voter authorization. And what that means is you're really talking about a bond that could exceed $2 billion. And that's a lot of debt for the city. And our annual budget for the city is $4.6 billion. So when people complain about property taxes, and let's note that we're doing this on tax day, April 15th, that they're struggling. Dallas has the highest tax rate of any large city in Texas except El Paso. And, they want to know that they're getting a value for their money. So should any of these not pass, we have other ways to fund them. And we might not be able to do them all on day one, which, by the way, these aren't going to happen on all day one either, right? So they're all timed out over years. And that's what would happen is we would find a way over the years to say, okay, this year we're going to take care of the Meyerson, the next year we're going to take care of the art museum, and the projects would get done. But it would mean there's some choices to make.
So my other question to you is this, based on what you just said, and that is Dallas has long been criticized by some on council. You mentioned it in your op-ed piece about Dallas putting on debt or on bond regular maintenance, street repairs, alley repairs, things that you and others in the past have said should be done in a regular maintenance budget.
Yep.
So talk to me about this. And since this has been going on for a long time, what do you think the answer is and how do you get there?
Well, it's a great question. And so I've been on council almost 5 years, and I do talk about this every time, because what we are doing is we're putting things on there that I don't even think qualify for the bond. So a project is supposed to have a 20-year life. Well, some of the projects are asphalt. They don't have a 20-year life. And in fact, some of them were on the 2017 bond, and here they come on the next bond again. So I do think that's problematic. It doesn't mean I don't think we should pass the streets one. But what has to happen is the shift that we rely on debt, that we've got to shift it back into our general fund. And there's a level of fiscal restraint that says every great idea that comes to any person on council doesn't mean we can fund every one of those. And, most people, if you say, hey, Jack, we're going to put $50 million into street repair, you go, okay, well, is that good? Is that more than last year? Is it less than last year? What if I put 55 million or 60 million? Like, those numbers don't really equate to people. What does that mean for my street quality? And so you have to have the council members who are looking at that level of detail to say, whoa, that's not even going to keep us at the same kind of rating that we've been at. This is going to degrade our streets. We're going to have to invest more. But it's really easy for, city manager, for council to just go along with, well, we'll take a little bit out of here because who would even notice? And so there's a lot of pockets of money like that where the numbers are too big to really understand the difference that it makes.
Anything else you'd like to say?
I guess the only other thing I would want to say is that there's a lot of pressure for people to say, just vote yes on everything. But we're a thinking people and we're an independent people. And I hope people will take a moment to examine what the propositions are and what they're for, and really decide for themselves if this is a debt they want to take on, or if it's a project they want us to fund through the general fund. It doesn't mean it's not something we should do. There may be some things in there we shouldn't, but overall, the projects are well considered. The bond committee did a really, really good job. A tough job. I'm not sure it was laid out for them the way I would hope to do it in the future, but they really went through project by project, trying to evaluate how to improve the city. And so now it's up to the voters to do the same thing and go through and say, this is important to me. I want this to be funded. I'm willing to take on this debt, or this isn't how I want to pay for this item. And more than anything, I hope people just go vote. No matter how you vote, I want you to go vote, because I think they're counting on having a very, very low turnout. And I think that's depressing. Everyone should have a stake in improving our city. And I hope you'll get out and vote and make your voice heard.
Dallas City Council Member Cara Mendelsohn, thank you so much. We appreciate it.